Hey everyone, the Talking Dads podcast is brought to you by Little Scholars Early Learning Center. Whether your family needs infant care, a preschool program, or before and after school care, Little Scholars' highly rated Step Up to Quality programs provide quality early childhood education at an affordable price. Visit www.littlescholars.net to get in contact with an enrollment specialist and schedule a tour of any of their 5 Lake County campuses. Here's the deal. Talking Dads fans are getting a little bonus. Mention that you heard about them through our podcast, and when you tour, and you'll receive $25 off of your registration fee. Again, that's Little Scholars Early Learning Center, where children learn, play, and grow together. We are also brought to you by Pubfredo Gastropub. Pubfredo was voted Best Gastropub in Cleveland in 2019 by Cleveland Magazine Silver Spoon Awards. We love Pubfredo. Their menu is chef-inspired, always pushing the limits of traditional pub fare. The other night I had a burger, I believe it was called the Pub Burger. It was incredible. Cooked perfectly. It was amazing. And you won't have a problem pairing your favorite item on the menu with their great selection of local craft beers, crafted cocktails, and of course, an amazing bourbon and whiskey selection. I went with the Bullet 10-year with my Pub Burger. All of this in a cozy, fun, come-as-you-are atmosphere. You can check them out at pubfredo.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Pubfredo Gastropub.
We are also brought to you by Marky Fresh Barbershop in Mentor, Ohio.
Bro, I love Marky Fresh.
It's the best, isn't it?
Dude, I get cut there like every 3 weeks. My kid gets cut there every month
Every
and a
now and
half or
then.
so. Month and a half, 2 months, something like that. They do such a good job.
The environment is phenomenal. Everybody's awesome there.
Can I tell you a secret? I don't
Please.
even give a shit about the haircut. It is so much freaking fun going there.
Just to hang out.
Yeah. I have such
Just have a good time. Every time, man.
Yeah.
You
But
get caught.
They
If you
do.
want to be in there, they're fast.
Oh, yeah.
Their whole app, everything, booking to get in,
so
it's so
easy.
convenient and easy, but you get caught up
Oh, yeah.
because you just want to hang out and talk with these guys.
You know what the word is? Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
So many shenanigans.
You don't want to leave.
It's so much fun. But honestly, they do a fantastic job.
They really do.
I look way better when I leave than when I
You
come in there.
really do.
I know.
So, yeah, Marky Fresh.
Yeah, book at markyfresh.com.
Book, get in, stay fresh.
Guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Talking Dads. This is episode 2 of season 2, but we're actually taking it back to over the summer when we were, off. Steve and I went down to Kentucky and visited Rabbit Hole for a private tour of the distillery, the whole facility. It was amazing, and our good buddy Adam Edwards took us around, told us the history behind everything. And then we sat down in the sensory lab, which is kind of an exclusive place that we got to go into. And we just talked, man. We talked about, Rabbit Hole, of course, but then we also talked about Adam and his, at the time, getting ready to become a dad. He has since had the baby, and so huge congrats to Adam and his family. Enjoy the episode. Have so much fun. Have a wonderful weekend. Love you.
In a world where moms continue to dominate parenting authority and a father's role is minimized in society, 2 dads take on the toughest parenting topics on a weekly basis, all while drinking bourbon. They are the Talking Dads.
Going over here to the left.
Okay.
First one on the left here. So this is Cave Hill. This is the flagship. Now I will say, we'll get nice and nerdy.
I love it.
We'll
I love
really
it.
dig into them. I'm going to do something first though that I love to do this. I feel like you can really learn a lot about somebody if you ask them what they do for a living or what their hobbies are, what their favorite color is. But you don't really know somebody until you had a drink with them.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers to that, sir.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so this is Cave Hill. This is a 4-grain Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. This is the first thing that Cave, our owner and founder, this is the first thing he started making. The whole thing with Cave Hill is about his frustration, when he first moved to Louisville. So, in case, anybody, your listeners and viewers don't know, he was a psychologist for 20 years before he did this, which is not really your normal route to being a bourbon distiller.
Yeah.
And so he was living in Chicago, and he met a girl from Louisville named Heather that really turned him into a bourbon drinker. And so after they got married, they moved down here to Louisville. And as you all know, Louisville's amazing. It's beautiful. He fell in love with the city. And when you fall in love with the city of Louisville, you kind of fall in love with bourbon too. I mean,
Yeah,
they
goes hand in hand, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So once he kind of started discovering more about the history of Louisville, he started discovering more about the history of bourbon. And back then, we're talking mid to late 2000s, you'd walk into a liquor store, you see like 30, 40 bourbons on the shelf. It's all made by like 4 people.
Yes.
Right.
Now that's drastically changed in the last decade or so, but not even that much. And even on top of that, you couldn't really tell what was in the bottle. You could tell the proof, sometimes the age.
Right.
That's about it. So he really became frustrated with, hey, I really like this bottle. Where is it made? What's in it? And so once he started discovering about the recipes that were on the shelves, he noticed that everything was pretty monotonous. Everybody used majority corn, of course, for a bourbon, but then just wheat or rye is their secondary flavoring grain, and then like 5 or 10% malted barley, and that's it. He was a Scotch drinker first. Before he discovered bourbon, he knew that malted grains could create a lot of flavor. So he started messing around on some mash bills. He really got the idea from some pre-prohibition mash bills that tended to use a little bit more malt back then. So he made, just a little 5-gallon still just for family and friends. He was started making a few different recipes. And this recipe was the one that people really liked. And this is 70% corn and 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley. So this is a true 4-grain.
Okay, yeah.
Even though there's wheat in this is not really a wheated bourbon. Like, I don't call this a wheater.
Yeah.
It's got a fair amount of spice to it.
Yeah, a little bit.
The honey malt is really the flavor.
Yeah.
I was going to say
this.
the honey pops. Like,
Yeah, it does.
It's that I'm having a really hard time with words today, even throughout the tour that you gave us. But like, it is that subtle yet there in like the first thing I even taste. I smelled it.
The honey, I think, comes through quite a bit on the
Yeah.
nose.
It's
I mean,
good.
it really does. And I mean, even the palate of this, when you look at the label, and we put our mash bills on the label because, once again, Cave wants the consumer to know. He wants to know what's in there. And so you look at the label and you see wheat, and you're like, oh, this is going to be, super soft, which it is soft and maybe kind of one note. But what you don't realize is that it's not just the grains. We shout out on that label. We shout out Kelvin Cooperage because they're such a huge part of our flavor, or those barrels. And that barrel, that toasting and charring of the barrel that they do, it brings out so much of the barrel spice.
Yeah.
And that's, right up front on this one, on the palate, it is just baking spices.
Yeah, it is. And man, it's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, even the finish on it too. It's like
I remember
still got the spice. It's really, man. I like this one a lot. This is what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
I was just going
Because
to say.
I cut you off again. I always cut him off, and I need to. We cut each other off
Yeah,
constantly.
we do that constantly. That's what
And I
happens
feel
when we
terrible.
work together for that long. No, I was going to say Cave Hill is the first Rabbit Hole product that I ever had, and which makes sense, right? But I remember this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And I remember thinking, not for me. And as I go back to it, and as my palate has changed, or I think that I've just changed my tastes, I don't know, like, man, this is really, really good. I haven't had the Cave Hill.
Well, it's funny though because we always talk about it. We review things all the time, different bourbons all the time, whiskeys and everything, and we find that we always say we should go back to that and review it again.
Right.
Because as things change, your palate changes, and just get it aired out a little bit and give it another try. I mean, it's just one of those things you don't really think about. So maybe at first you're like, not like you said, not for me.
Yeah.
Go back to it. And
I think it's almost, it's because it's pretty complex for, a flagship, bourbon that's not, it's a 4-grain bourbon that, isn't trying to do too much.
Right.
Right. You're not claiming to be aged in this or that or, whatever, which I don't mind. But for being so simple, it's really complex.
Yeah, I like this one a lot.
You kind of hit the nail on the head with that too, is that I think that there is a pretty heavy complexity to this, but it's easy to sip. And I think a lot of that is owed to, once again, the barrels, right? people associate bourbon with certain characteristics like vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, and that exists in here. And so it's easy to sip as a bourbon drinker. But even someone who may drink, mainly Irish whiskey or Scotch, which, we got a bunch of it on the shelves behind us here. I think they can approach this as well because that amount of malt gives you a little bit of an angle that most bourbons don't. Like this, it's easily recognized as bourbon when you drink this.
Absolutely.
But there's also, the green apple, the honey from that honey malt, the mint. There's this kind of crazy like peppermint in here.
It is, and the longer it sits too.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel that.
If you really, once you kind of get down in the bottom of this glass and you really, I'm going to sound smarter than I am, agitate the congeners. You really do that.
Wait, what?
Yeah, right?
I like that.
I said that to myself in my head. Like,
Make sure I get that
Sounded
first.
really good there.
But you really get in there and kind of bruise it up a little bit. You get some of those more earthy, malty flavors that you don't really associate with all bourbon.
Yeah.
The smell on the nose, it smells phenomenal. And I'll be honest with you, I chugged mine because it is very easy to drink. And I think we've been thinking about this all day, and we're like, this is our first drink of the day. We're like, man. So both of us, you're sitting there like, makes you agitate. We're like, oh, well, okay.
I was going to say,
I put my hand over. I'm like, yeah, totally. But even smelling just the Glencairn though, it's like
the last. So when the last sip, I actually tried to taste because I have a problem that I don't try to taste it all the time. But I will say this, as I was really thinking about it, that char really, really comes through on the finish if you let it.
Yes. It really does. This bottle, I think that whole thing of Kelvin toasting the barrels first, and it's cool how they do it. So they don't use, gas, right? They don't use a gas flame. They actually build wood fires underneath the barrels, which is incredible in itself. And I didn't really know this until I started talking to some of the people over at Kelvin. I asked them something. I can't remember what it was. I asked them, and it kind of led into another conversation. And one of their supervisors, William, reached out to me, and he was like, "Yeah, it's really interesting. We start that fire underneath the barrel, and it gets up to around 500 degrees." He's like, once it gets up to 500 degrees, it's toasting the barrel. As soon as the wood combusts inside the barrel, which is, a nice way of saying catches on fire, right? I was thinking that. I was like, so once it catches on fire.
Yeah.
Once it combusts inside, then it's charring. And they don't time it. He was like, sometimes it takes 10 minutes for it to combust. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes to combust. Because I think I was asking, how long are we toasting for it? He's like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And I was like, you don't know. What kind of establishment is this? And then he started talking about it. I was like, wow, that's really neat. And then he's like, once it chars, we've got about 30, 45 seconds to achieve that level 3 chars, which is what we use on this.
Okay.
He's like, once it starts to alligator, that's when it's like a level 4 char, and we're going to pull it off. So I thought that was a really neat kind of artisanal way. Think about when you're grilling steaks. I'm sure we've all been there, right? Sure. Where, you can use a thermometer, like a meat thermometer or something. Yeah. Or you can just do that thing where you're like adjusting, right?
Yep.
We all do. You're just pressing it with the tongs or your thumb, and it's done when it's done. And sometimes it's exactly the way you want it. Sometimes maybe it's a little under, it's a little over. But because you did that, I think it tastes better.
100%. As long as you click the tongs.
Yeah, make sure they work.
Yeah. You always have to click the tongs. That's number one. That's just something you do.
They work.
Yeah,
no, right. They didn't rust up in the drawer.
Right. Still works.
No, that's really cool. I think that's kind of like what we were talking about upstairs. Is like the relationship between the science and the art. Like even down to where the barrels are coming from. There's so much art involved of just doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Now 10, 15 minutes, I don't know. I'll know when it's ready.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And all the people in there, so at Kelvin, it's family owned and operated, just like Rabbit Hole. And when you walk in there, there's a bunch of employees there. It's a really neat space. They've got all the wood packed up and kind of stacked up around you. And then you start walking through where they're like shaping the staves and I don't know, it's just really every single station has something to it that you're like, wow, that's really, I didn't know that's how they did barrels, And then you go into the middle of the operation where they're sitting these barrels up on these grates and they have the fires underneath. And what they'll tell you is that the people that have worked the longest for Kelvin, so 20 years, they're the ones that are doing that because they know.
Yeah.
They know what it
Right.
smells like. They know what it looks like when it's ready.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's just
That's
incredible.
that's super cool.
I think that's
It's like
and
cooking a
that's the art.
steak. You know.
Yeah,
you
that's
just
just
know.
You
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
know.
right.
And sometimes you're wrong, but usually
Yeah.
not.
Right.
You
There's
know?
time. That does
But
happen.
you're wrong enough times that eventually you know.
Exactly.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's how you get there. You can't read that in a book. I mean, again,
It's like
you could
mastering a
do it,
recipe.
but that's the thermometer.
You know, you're like, how do you do that? We're like, well, I just did a little bit of this, put a little bit of that.
right,
How long
right.
did you do that? Oh, well, I don't know.
don't
It's just
know.
kind of what I
How does
usually
it
do.
taste, right?
Yeah. How's it? Is it good?
But
Well,
that's
good.
what I think is really cool about the industry in itself is so there's so much of the art and yet at scale,
Yes.
right? Like that's what's really cool to me. And then seeing the process. So we got to go do throughout the whole, every step of the way, see where it's bottled, see where it's barreled, see where it's made. I think it's really impressive to me to see the scale of things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you said you got 9, what's the term for that?
The fermenters?
The fermenters going, and you're doing, those are each
8,000 gallons.
8,000 gallons. I mean, so like, to me, that's just so much juice that's going
Yes.
on. And I don't know, it just seems awesome to
Yeah,
me.
it's pretty incredible.
That like all of
really
these
fun.
little
See it.
stages add up to something like this. And I think I was kind of telling you before, and Steve and I talked about it on the drive down here. We're like, you know, what's cool about this whole journey, I guess, that we've been going on is now when I go to a store and I grab a bottle off the shelf, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to go drink some whiskey tonight. It's where did this come from and how is it made? And like, it just tastes better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's super cool.
I mean, I think that, you know, the storylines behind things. I mean, when you think about, like I said, with Cave Hill, you taste it and you can kind of develop your own sort of sense of where it's going, and it has its own identity. But when you start hearing about, you know, how Cave was like making this with like a little 5-gallon still, and then, you know, he was just giving it to friends and family, and then it makes its way into, you know, the hands of, you know, Larry Ebersold, and Larry is like, man, you know, this is really great. I think you can make a run at it. And then you think about that tract that he took, you know, and where it ended up today. I mean, even the conversations he had about this, I love what he tells this story about, you know, once he decided, he was like, you know what, let's do it. You know, he looked at Heather and he's like, let's sell the practice. They were both practicing down here, and he's said, you know, let's mortgage the house and let's open a bourbon distillery. And, you know, she says, you know, Cave, this obsession of yours, I think it's going to lead the family down the rabbit hole, and there's no going back. And so right away, I mean, there's the name.
Boom.
And then even that sort of tagline, you know, in this hallway outside here that we kind of walk down, you know, when you enter the distillery, I mean, it says there's no going back all the way down it. It's not to like scare people. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
It's really all about finding your passion. Once you start doing something that you're really passionate about, you can't imagine going back.
Right.
You can't go back to that job. We did this whole series of videos that were directed by Giovanni Ribisi, and we got these people that were, you know, artists and musicians and hat makers and sculptors, and they sat down and they talked about that, where they were working this job that they weren't really into, and then one day they were like, I'm done, I'm walking out, and they chose to follow their passion, and they've never looked back.
Right.
And that's really, I mean, you think about that, and you think about all that went into this bottle, it tastes just even a little bit better after that.
Yeah,
That's true.
I mean,
That
it's
is very
Even
true.
better somehow.
Yeah.
You think about that story of all the people that like they have this dream and they're just stuck at this job or their career that they're doing. And they're like, you think about it like, man, maybe I'll go out and do my you know, pursue my dream. I'll just go ahead and do it, but you never do.
Right.
When you think about that, they left everything. They put everything out there, and they started that. That makes that whole story behind it makes it taste that much better. You're right about that.
There's just
Because I mean, you think about that.
something
That's the
amorous
American dream, right?
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's that like love story behind it.
Yeah.
You know,
You have your passion of-
it's that's cool.
that is awesome.
And I think that really kind of tells you the story of the distillery. I mean, everyone talks about elevator pitches sometimes. What's your 90-second elevator?
Yeah.
You know? But I mean, you don't even need an elevator pitch with this. It's passion. It's all about passion and love. That is really, even, you know, Cave's family crest. I don't,
Well, is it?
around here, it's like, no, that's Kelvin.
Oh, it's Kelvin.
That's
Okay.
Kelvin. We shout out Kelvin on all those bottles.
Oh,
That's
okay.
their
Okay.
crest.
Says that now.
But
Yeah.
his crest, it's got, it says Amari et Opus, which means love and work, which basically means they should be the same thing.
Right.
They should be the same thing, right? And I think that at Rabbit Hole, we've all kind of adopted that as our credo. Like, just for me, it's do what you love and share it with those that you love. That is what I do every single day.
Super cool.
And that's, I'm a very
It's kind of like the story behind whiskey too, right?
Right.
Share it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you get a good bottle of
That's what we
something, you're
talk-
like,
yeah.
we're always like, you know what's the best thing about getting a good bottle of whiskey is like having somebody over and be like, you got to try this. Sit down and just talk about it. Tell the story of it and like wherever the conversation goes. That's the best thing that I think.
Well,
And that's
I mean,
the best thing about what we do with our podcast. Like we sit down, we have a bottle, and we just sit there and just talk. We just bullshit about being dads or just whatever we're doing in our lives.
That's your passion. And
Absolutely.
you're able
Right.
to share it with people. And I think that's so
And the
important.
best conversations happen not around the best whiskey, but around the best company.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, and so, but then I get falling into the trap because I was like, oh man, that, whatever, I'm not going to name any brands, but like that was super good. And then I'll go back to it like by myself and I'll be like, well, I mean, it's good.
Yeah,
but
it's
the
all right.
experience makes
you know,
it
but the
sometimes.
experience
Yes.
makes
It
it
really
that
does.
much better, and I think the story makes it that much better. So the more you can learn, and not all consumers are going to want to learn about but they should, because man, it's you just have a much better appreciation for, you know, that brown water that's in there. You know?
Absolutely.
Well, you get the personality of it too. I mean, as we were kind of walking around here, there were people walking around. I was kind of interacting with them because we all know each other here, and I think, you know, before I started working for a distillery, you know, I was a consumer, obviously, and I loved bourbon. I'm from Louisville, so I was born with a
naturally.
bottle in my hand. You know, my poor wife. And, but I really, you know, I already loved it. And then you go from that consumer to somebody on the inside, and you think you would get jaded with it, and you just don't.
Yeah.
You just
That's
don't.
cool.
You just fall in love with it. And then the people here, I mean, you start realizing the people that are behind the brands. I mean, Cave is obviously, Cave's the mad scientist. He's the everything behind Rabbit Hole. This is his baby. He's the visionary behind it. But then on top of that, I mean, there's, you know, the distillers, there's the bottlers, the barrelers, the tour guides, the ambassadors, right? There's so many people that make up every single facet of this. I mean, we were just in the retail space there, and you all were talking to Dak, and
Right.
he's hand labeling. I mean, this guy is our design team. We do everything in-house, right? We
Yeah.
don't farm anything out. He is our lead designer. So anything you see design-wise with Rabbit Hole is coming from the mind of Dak. Dak is incredibly important to Rabbit Hole. And he's here at like 7 o'clock on a Friday, hand labeling.
Yeah.
Hand labeling for a single barrel that's coming up. And that goes to show you this type of passion that's in this building, from Cave all the way down to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely,
That's
man.
super cool.
It is awesome.
Real quick, you mentioned that you are a brand ambassador.
I am.
By title, but clearly more than that, as you know every single inch of this place. And like you were telling the story how you worked on the bottling line for a while, and like I think that's super cool because, especially, I guess, if you want to have a good ambassador, they should know every single thing about it.
Absolutely.
But before we go any further, can you kind of tell everyone who you are? And so what we usually do is say, give us your dad profile, but you can talk as much as you want about that part of your life.
Yeah.
Just real quick, and then we'll get into some more whiskey.
Yeah, so my name is Adam Edwards. I'm the digital brand ambassador for Rabbit Hole. So I've been with Rabbit Hole, honestly, right when this building opened to the public. I came on, it started as a part-time tour guide. It was kind of the same thing I was talking about before, where I was doing another job that I liked. And then I came here, they kind of poached me from that other job. And I just came as part-time, working on the weekends. I think it took about 3 weeks before I was all in.
Yeah.
And I was like, I quit my other job, started doing this full-time. Started helping run the tour department. And then last year, you know, in March, when hospitality ended for everybody, they kind of moved me into this role because they love the way I talk about the brand. They love how passionate I am about American whiskey and bourbon, and then also how much I know about Rabbit Hole. It was kind of a nice, easy fix,
Right.
you know, and I was able to kind of reach out. I do a lot of stuff digitally, so appearing on media like this,
Right.
you know, doing virtual tours and tastings for trade side and consumer side. So sometimes a liquor store in whatever, Hoboken, New Jersey, they want to do some staff training, they'll reach out. I'll lead them through the distillery, just like with my phone on a selfie stick, you know, and and do a tasting for them. Sometimes, a restaurant will be doing a plate. I just did a plated dinner last night. So they were in Florida, and they were doing a plated dinner. They were pairing with Rabbit Hole. And so I just kind of walked around the distillery. Every time they served a new course, I talked about the spirit.
That's
the chef
cool.
would come out, talk about the food. And so I've got a pretty
super
broad
cool.
range.
Yeah.
And then really my dad profile, I'm not quite a dad yet, but I'm almost there. In August, we're having our first child, a little baby girl. And
Big congrats, man.
Congrats on that,
really
man.
excited.
That's-
Thank you.
yeah,
We're so
I
excited.
know you're excited, and that's great.
Yeah, we talked about it a
was.
little bit before this, and I can see how excited you are, and that's
It's
awesome.
exciting
Man.
and terrifying. I remember
Yes.
when we hit 20 weeks, my wife Kyla, we were kind of laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and she goes, up until now we've been counting up, and now we're counting down. And I remember I was like hyperventilating.
Like, oh, gosh, yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, it's really happening. But yeah, I can't wait for that part
Good,
of my life.
man.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
it's amazing. It really is amazing, man.
Well, and
You're
it's
gonna
good,
love it.
and it's good that you say it's exciting and terrifying because
'Cause
there's
that's the
some
truth.
people that don't understand that it's terrifying until they come,
Yeah.
and then they're oh shit, it really is
Yeah.
terrifying.
I'm sure it'll even
in a
double
good
down.
way. Oh,
You know,
of
yeah,
course.
For
it'll
sure.
even get worse at that. But I'm trying to steel myself for that right now. And I can tell you, and this is something I've said before, is I don't do well with blood. And my wife is like, you're going to be right there with me. And I'm like, man, I hope this is the smoothest delivery ever. Cause
I'll tell you what, man. Leading up to it, it's like you talk to other guys and like, oh man, don't look, don't do that, don't whatever. I went in there with that mindset, right? Until I got in the delivery room, and I'm like, I'm gonna go run to the car real quick. Like, doctor's like, you're not going anywhere. She's like, get over here right now and hold her leg. I'm like, hold her leg. I'm like, Jesus. And I'm like, you're right there. So it's like, what anybody tells you, any guy tells you, macho, like, oh, don't, whatever. The whole thing is awesome. It really is. It's amazing. And you'll never feel emotion like that ever.
I mean, this is actually one of the reasons that we started this podcast.
It's for somebody who's going to be a
Him
new
and
dad.
I have always been very honest with each other. Steve and I have known each other since we were like 4 years old. So like there are no secrets. Like we're just very honest with each other. And typically guys will get in a situation and like Steve said, like, yeah, don't look and don't worry, like let them do their thing.
Yeah, let the nurses
and
take care of
whatever.
everything.
In reality, him and I were both just like, dude, that was amazing.
Yeah.
There is no thoughts of, oh my God, that's gross. And like most of the time, like we were like, Monday morning quarterbacking and we're like, wait a minute, no, that was placenta over the place, whatever. And before that, you're like, oh, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah,
But, like,
absolutely.
in the moment, it is so amazing. Everything from the actual birth to, at least in my mind, to like the team that is just around and making things happen and seeing, just reaction and the preparation and, the whole thing. I don't know. You're a process guy, right? Like you understand the process of making, I always try and correlate things. The process to me was so incredible. And that sounds like a weird thing to like, I don't know, lift up on a pedestal, but like, I don't know. It was just super cool. And I'll never forget like those hours leading up to and seeing everything happen and seeing the different methods. And then all of a sudden my boy was there and I was just like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah. It happens and it's like, holy
and it's just like
shit,
that.
man.
And you don't think about the blood. You don't think about
Anything.
the gross stuff or whatever, preconception that you have. All you think about is like, holy shit, I have a child now. And yes, there's an added pressure that comes with it, but then there's also just this sense of like, I'm more of a person, more of a man today. Not in like a macho way, more of an I'm a complete person,
right?
Right?
Yes.
Like, and now, like I have something more than me, and like I always thought that like when I got married, right?
Oh
But,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, that's nothing. And I love my wife dearly, and she doesn't watch or listen, so like I'm not
whatever,
just
right?
saying
Yeah.
that. Like I love her to death, but like when my kids were born, I was like, holy, like that is a completely different feeling.
For sure.
I've started to get kind of close to it because we were just talking before we started recording was about the first time I got to see her in the ultrasound, because, doing this through COVID, I can't go into the doctors.
Yeah, that's very tough.
And she had found a private office that would let me in. And I remember sitting, it was such a strange setup, because like they walked in, there was 2 doors, but it was the same room. And so she took my wife through one door, and she goes, no, you go down there. And I was like, all right. And I walk in the room, and we're like looking at each other in the same room. And they sat me down on this black leather couch, and I was like, what is about to happen?
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready for this. I've seen this movie.
But then there's this big screen in front of me, and I'm like, okay, I've seen this sort of thing, because we were like FaceTiming before when I was having when she was having this the ultrasounds, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, huh. And then it was just, she was there. I just saw her, and it was just the emotion that hits you. And I think that's when I started to realize that person was coming.
Yeah.
That she was going to be here.
Yeah.
And it got very real at that moment.
Sure.
And it was just,
and remember those things too, because the real moments are, it's almost like an arc, Like, the real moments are positive.
They keep progressive.
Positive. And then later on, you'll be like, oh, fuck, that's real. They really do that.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important to remember the really good ones. Like, I remember Heartbeat the first time. Like, and this is before COVID. This is 2015. And I remember Heartbeat the first time. And that's when, I stopped the act of like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. And it went to, oh my God, this is amazing. What do I need to do to get ready for this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're going to have those moments too. Like, the closer you get, I mean, you're looking at August, right? So, like, my son is due in like 4 weeks. And I'm to the point where, like, oh, shit. Like, leading up to it, you're like, okay, I got to pull.
What's coming.
I know exactly what's coming. I'm looking at my 5-year-old, and I'm like, oh, God. Another one of these is coming. I'm having a third boy. It's like, oh, man. But, I mean, maybe because it's a third one, I'm like, at the same time, I have nothing prepared in the house, right? Like the first one, I mean, we had the nursery set up. We had everything all ready to go. We have nothing ready for the third one. The third one's like, whatever. Yeah, he'll be fine.
I keep hearing from people, the time you get to the third one, it's just like, just hitch up your skirt and go.
Yeah, let's go.
It's like, to have the baby.
I'm the youngest of 3 boys in my family, and like I know. I'm like, nobody gives a shit.
Like, youngest here,
you're like, hey, do whatever you want. Go, you're fine. You'll figure it out. But yeah, man, the whole lead up is exciting, man. It's amazing. It really is, and it's cool to talk. Like, we love talking to new dads. It's so much fun to not scare anybody, but it is fun to scare people.
It is super fun.
But
we won't really get into it right now.
But on a positive note, it is amazing, man. It's very exciting. So I'm very happy for you. This is cool. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it.
So tell us about the next whiskey, but I want to say this.
Say it.
All of the cliches that you're going to hear, it goes by in the blink of an eye, and don't miss anything. Take it to heart.
It's very true.
It's all true.
It's all true.
I still remember my son was just starting to walk. Okay, and we went to a restaurant. It's my first son, and this old couple. They were sitting across from us. Their grandparents. They're like, "Oh man, I remember my kids being that age." They're like, "Take it all in because it goes by like that." They're like, "We have grandkids now," and that moment right there, I remember that like it was yesterday. And I told him, I hear it all the time, but I'm trying to take it all in. Like, I know it's cliche, but I'm really trying to take it all in. And I'm telling you, like, his son is about to be 6.
Yeah, he'll be 6 in June.
My son is, he'll be 5.5 at that point. So, like, that went by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I mean, it just flies. And it's crazy because, like, now they're in school, they're playing sports, and now you're like, and then you're into that hustle. Like, we're running everywhere.
Right.
Thursday through Sunday, we have something going on every day. Soccer, basketball, baseball. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then even Sunday we have baseball too. So it's like, man, we have to be everywhere.
And then you're back at work, right?
And then you're back and then the weekend's over.
Yeah.
That's why I'm happy we're here in Louisville today, because it's Friday and
nice.
Work, and like left my pregnant wife who's about to pop at any moment with the 2 kids.
The same way, she's like, Ash is number 3. Don't worry about it.
I'm always like, I'm really sorry. She's like, I'm fine. I don't care. And another thing is you really start to appreciate your wife too a lot more.
Yeah, God.
What they go through. I mean,
I'm getting there.
Yeah,
I'm getting there.
Like, can you imagine as a man trying to do that, carry a baby for 9 months, and I see her trying to like get up out of bed. She's like, rocking.
Yeah.
I'm like, see how it feels?
Oh, now you know.
I don't actually say that.
Good thing she doesn't listen.
No, they don't listen to any of this stuff. They support us, but they're not listening.
Oh yeah,
That's awesome.
All right, I guess we could get into the next whiskey.
Number 2, this is High Gold. Okay. So this is also a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, just like Cave Hill. I really think it's completely different, though. It's completely different. So this is a high rye bourbon. This is 70% corn like Cave Hill, but this is 25% malted rye and 5% malted barley. Let's get real stuff here.
And as you know, I mean, you saw our review of the Boxer Grill. We had the what we call the legs. We call drippies.
The drippies? Yeah.
we like to call them drippies.
I learned this when I kind of came from the wine world earlier in my career. And so tiers or legs, in Germany, I don't know the actual term for it, but they call them cathedral windows. And I always thought that was the coolest name for that.
That is really cool.
Isn't that cool?
If you look at those old cathedral windows, the ones that they look like they're dripping.
Yes. And I was like, that is, first of all, I'm sure the German word for it is like 9 syllables long.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
I was like, man, that's really cool.
Yeah, well, we go with drippies.
Drippies.
So the reason the first time we did a bourbon review, we said drippies, and we're like, because we couldn't think about it. We're like, I don't know what it's called. Let's call them drippies. And like, I remember my wife watched it, and she's like, those are called legs. I'm like, whatever, we're sticking with drippies. And you're on year 3. She never watched it. She's like, you guys are idiots.
Not professional at all.
No.
They know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I like this.
It's a lot different than Cave Hill.
It is.
It's a lot different than Cave Hill. I mean, for us, that's why we do 2 bourbons. You know, on paper, they look really similar. They're both 70% corn, 30% malt, 95 proof, about the same age, same stills, same barrels. But those secondary grains, you just change those up, and you get a radically different product.
That spearmint finish, like high to low.
Yeah,
it tapers off almost perfectly.
Yeah,
or probably perfectly. I guess I don't want to say almost.
Just say perfectly.
Really, really good.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. It's like that cooling spice, and it hits you like you know. I feel like Cave Hill kind of starts spicy and gets sweet for me, whereas High Gold, it really starts a little soft and sweet, like toasted coconut, butterscotch, and vanilla, and then it moves into that spice, and that spice kind of it hits you here in the Kentucky hug.
Yep.
That's how you know it's working, right? And it's very much like cinnamon, black pepper.
That's what I was gonna say. Was the pepper was because that's what I could smell on it too. Was the pepper?
And that's a European rye. This is that's not the right bottle. Long stretch. There we
go.
This one uses European rye. It's German rye that's been malted. And we use the German rye for this because it's named after a German guy. It's named after Christian Heigold. He was a German immigrant to the city of Louisville. It was like 1851, 1852. And he was a stonemason. And he really kind of changed the conversation in Louisville. When he got here, the know-nothings were in power. Very anti-immigrant. He did such beautiful work with stonework here. They sort of changed the conversation and became a very accepted person in social circles. That's where Louisvillians look at that watershed moment when the conversation changed in Louisville.
Okay.
We really kind of became the microcosm of the U.S. at that point. It was a real melting pot now. The music scene here, the art scene, the food scene, the liquor scene, of course. It's really from a lot of different cultures, and a lot of that is owed to Christian. And I think Cave just, he resonated with that, and he wanted to pay homage to Christians. So put his name on a bottle, and then we used German malted rye to make an American product, which I thought
really cool.
It's such a beautiful kind of story, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. I'm a High Gold boy. I am. I've been really drinking a lot of High Gold lately. I just love those balance of flavors in here.
Yeah, that's really
I'm a fan of this one.
I'd never had the High Gold before.
This is a first for me as well.
So, I mean, we kind of talked upstairs, too, a little bit, that up until probably about summertime last year, we were, I don't want to say anti-rye.
Yeah.
We weren't rye guys.
It just
I was still kind of new to the
right?
scene anyway. So I'm
Rye is not one that you can just jump in sometimes.
No.
You really can't.
No. And
what did we start? Like, we started like a rye month.
we started October of last year was Rye Month
Yeah.
because we had gone through Bourbon Heritage Month, and we're like, all right, dude, we just did 30 straight days of different bourbon.
Let's go. Let's
Like,
mix this up a little
I need a
bit.
break. Not I need to stop drinking. I just need a break from bourbon. And from my birthday's at the end of September,
Yeah.
Steve actually got me a bottle of Cave Hill, or I'm sorry, of Boxer
Grill, yeah.
which is how we actually
Yeah,
ended
because
up-
I went to the liquor store. I'm like, oh, I was trying to get in line. So there's lines. If there's something good coming, we're like, we have to go wait in line.
Yep.
Ohio's a closed state. I don't know how much
Honestly,
you know about
Louisville. So Louisville's not. We're not an ABC controlled state, but you still, when something is getting allocated, at least you're still in a line, especially in Louisville because everybody knows about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's getting like that, like to the point where I think it was you were telling me. Yeah, you told me the Chardon Giant Eagle.
that. Yeah.
So he got there at like 7:30 on a Thursday, and you were like,
Opens
"What?"
at 9 a.m.
Yeah, opens at 9. You were what?
24th or 25th in line.
That's really not too bad. I'm not gonna lie, I've done worse.
Well, but remember though, like state allocations say that there's 6 bottles.
yeah,
No
you're,
matter
you're
what.
like, you're like, okay, well, I'm out.
Yeah, I just left, and they said at like 6 a.m. there was 12 or 13 people. I'm like,
It's
I can't
ridiculous,
wait for 3
man.
hours, and it's state controlled, so the price is never going to change, which
Yep.
is a good thing.
that is a good
Absolutely.
thing, Yeah.
But I'm at
Then
the
you have to
point
deal with
now
that
where I'm
crap.
like, I'd rather pay a little bit more and
Yeah.
not have
Absolutely.
to stand in line for 5
Well,
hours.
where do you think the secondary market
Right,
came from?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Right? That's where the secondary market
Yeah.
came from. And, I'm kind of the mind that I drink my stuff. I do. I drink my stuff. Because, one of my good friends is in the industry. He always says there's always more bourbon.
Right.
Now, I will say I have a couple things at home that I haven't opened yet because, without getting into the names of the distillery burned down and, you're not going to find that pre-fire anymore. And so I've got a couple of those I haven't opened quite yet, but I will.
Yeah,
You'll get to
right.
it.
I will.
Yeah, I have quite a few bottles that we haven't. We're saving them for reviews,
Yes.
and I mean they're just sitting there waiting, and it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
man, I don't want to open them.
We've done so, and
Can't drink it
it's
fast
tough not to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I was waiting in line, and I forgot what I was getting at. What I ended up getting because I didn't know what was coming. I heard some things, so I showed up and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go grab Ian a bottle of something for his birthday. So I grabbed the Boxer Grill. I'm like, we got the ryes
So
going.
we wanted to start doing some
Yeah.
ryes, and because we had to, it was a Willet rye that and I was like, oh, okay, actually, this is really good. It was a gift.
Yeah.
Will
So
it
I was like,
great rise.
Yeah.
I
I
was
Great
like,
rise.
maybe I could get into these, and we were talking about it. And this was probably in August.
Yeah,
And so then for my birthday, he got me a Boxer Grill, and I was like,
And here we are
"All right,
today."
Let's try it.
It ended up being the best
do you
gift ever.
remember- Do you remember actually how we kind of started talking?
No, I don't.
I think you
Okay.
corrected us on a YouTube video.
So and so you're very good at your job because we did a review of Boxer Grill, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I was wrong. We did it, and we kind of try and talk a little bit about it, but I'm reading the bottle and everything, and I'm like, yeah, I think this is MGP.
Oh, right. Because
And
of
like
the 95.5.
within like hours,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, dude, this is ours, and like very nicely and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, thanks for correcting me, blah blah blah, and then we just started chatting, and COVID kind of pushed out our
Yeah,
meeting
because
but
originally it was
that's okay.
what January, and
Yeah.
then we
Yeah.
are today in May.
But yeah, that's what I love about, again, we are not whiskey people. We are dads that are just talking. But I think the reason that like we have kind of been drawn to the whiskey world is like everyone is just so cool.
We all
Yes.
know each other, too.
Like I totally
Like, everybody knows each other in this
did
industry,
not.
too.
Yeah.
I put out false information about your product, and you're like, and I got to learn something, and then it
Yeah.
led to it's just super super cool.
Well, I mean, and that's, thank you, by the way, for saying you're very good at your job. I like hearing that on tape.
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, that sort of thing, it's, you kind of run into all sorts of people in the industry, and you really, you always want to make sure that you have, I mean, I've got Rabbit Hole's best interests out in heart, but I am an ambassador for Rabbit Hole, but even more so, I'm an ambassador for American whiskey. And it was less of like, oh, hey, don't call us MGP. It was more like, hey, MGP's doing their own thing.
Right,
like, maybe MGP doesn't want to be called Rabbit Hole.
Right.
And I mean, but that, I will tell you, I mean, that happens all the time with this rye, because this rye, it's a 95.5 rye. And if you know
And that's
anything about whiskey, you hear 95.5 and you're like, MGP.
that's what I thought.
Yep.
It's MGP. I mean, you're not the first person to do that. You're definitely not going to be the last. And I always just like to say, first of all, what a compliment, because MGP does amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they do.
Right. We kind of talked about Larry Ebersold a little bit earlier. He was lead distiller, master distiller when it was Seagram's,
Right.
before it was LDI and then MGP. And that's Cave's mentor.
Right.
And the reason that we do a 95.5 rye is because of that thing that MGP did. I mean,
Right.
I really should have thought of this before we started.
Can you reach that last one?
Probably. It's going to make a good video.
Yeah.
So it'll make good tape when I fall over. But, the 95.5, I mean, that is the most celebrated rye mash bill
Yep.
out there because it highlights the rye.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Cave, you look at Cave Hill and High Gold, and Cave's like, I don't want to make the same thing anyone else is making. Right? We talked about this earlier. Like, MGP exists. They're doing MGP. Right? There's a lot of different labels that are also doing MGP.
Right.
We don't want to be one of those. That they've got that market cornered. We're making our own. And so Cave Hill and High Gold, very unique mash bills. I know one thing Cave says is, if the warehouse is burned down tomorrow, we can't go out and buy this. No one is making this.
Yes.
We have to start over again. Well, this, in all honesty, even though this is 95.5, this is so different than every 95.5 out there. And this is something that you all talked about on there, that, if our warehouse is burned down, we're not going to be able to go anywhere and get this.
Right.
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
95.5 out there is completely different than this. I love this rye because, and I think you had said this about it, how soft it was or gentle, or the way I can't remember, you would put it this really neat way about how it didn't just attack you right away.
Yeah.
Like 95.5 ryes do, because I think you were just getting in.
Right.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
Rise on
right.
that.
Yep.
And ryes a lot of times can be super aggressive. I think the word I like to use with this rye whiskey, instead of aggressive, because it's not, it's savory. It's not,
that's
it's
a
our
good way to
most
put that.
savory whiskey, right? And even the grain itself, I mean, let's get even more into the story here. High Gold uses that German malted rye. This grain, it's not the same rye. We use a completely different rye grain. First of all, it's not malted, and it's from Canada. So it's going to give you a different flavor. MGP is really known for the 95.5 rye. They use mostly European rye. That they're not using. They do use some Canadian rye,
Right.
but mostly they're not. And so that Canadian rye grain, it's a different animal. It's a different animal. Now, this still does have legs on it, and I don't mean that in your drippy way. I mean like
Yeah,
the
right.
legs for it
It
to
moves,
move.
yeah.
It doesn't have the cathedral windows. I mean, it has those too, but it really has a little bit of a bite to it because it is majority rye.
Right.
But I think that it's a little bit more on the rose water and the pipe tobacco kind of thing. And full transparency, everybody is watching this. It's funny. I picked up some bottles and started pouring these. I didn't even pour out of this bottle, which is our newest bottle. I poured off of a rye before it said Boxer Grail on it. It was from like 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
And so it's funny because this is one of the first things I tried from Rabbit Hole. And I started nosing this, and I was like, I better make sure it's still good. Because, bourbon,
Sure.
and whiskey, after a couple of years in the bottle, sometimes
yeah.
it might oxidize. And it brought me right
Wow,
back to the
that's good.
first time
Yeah.
I ever had Rabbit Hole. Was that I
That's
just started
cool.
smelling this. And it's just like, it's just like rye candy. It's sweet.
Yeah.
And it's also just so much like a
I think savory is right.
tobacco, right?
Yeah.
right.
Just aromatic. And even on the palate of this, it's just
You said
black
pipe
tea
tobacco,
forever.
and now I'm
Yeah, it's
black
funny.
tea. Yeah. Like those.
It's funny though, because we talked about that. Sometimes you have a tough time picking up what you're smelling.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then you'll say like, pipe tobacco, leather, or cherry, or something.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
And
That's
sometimes
exactly
it
what
takes
that is.
it's good. That's why, doing this stuff, this room that we're in, the sensory lab, a lot of work goes in here when you're by yourself because you don't want people around kind of saying, things in front of you
Influencing, right.
influencing what you're tasting because we're looking for quality in here and
Yeah.
making sure that, stuff we're getting ready to put into the bottles from the barrel, that it's up to our highest quality, or maybe something just came off the still, or a new product or a core product, whatever. But a lot of what happens in here, the sensory team, we get together and it's people in here and we're talking about it. Like, well, what did you get? I remember, there's a founders collection that we have. And it was a really brand new thing. It's a really old bourbon, some of Cave's personal stocks that he finished in Mizunara, Japanese oak casks. And I walked in here and I started kind of smelling it and tasting it. People were talking about it. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what is that nose? Like, there's something on here. And I heard somebody say sandalwood. And I was like, oh, son of a bitch. It's sandalwood. It's absolutely sandalwood. And then I even felt good because I started throwing some other things out there, and I came back a couple days later, and on this whiteboard, they had all the flavors that they were coming up with because we started talking about, it was about a year before we released it, about, what are we going to put on the label? What are we going to talk about in the press? And I had said something like peach, like apricot and peach. And I looked up, and there was apricot and peach, and I was like, hey, that's all right.
There you go.
Cool.
All right, read my mind.
I said that in front of other people, and they picked it up. So, I mean, I think you're right. You get that with other people sometimes.
For sure.
You get that crosstalk, and it really helps you identify with
absolutely. I mean, sometimes I'm afraid to be like, to say something that I'm tasting. Like on the high gold, like I was like, you know what? I was thinking pepper. And then you said it. I'm like, damn it. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, I should have said it.
Well, it's
sound
funny
professional
too.
over here.
We talk about how we're not professionals, but when you drink whiskey, as much as we do now, over the last couple of years, it's amazing how you really do start to understand what flavors are coming out or what smells are coming out.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of times, especially when we do our reviews, and again, we have fun with our reviews, but there's a lot of times where him or I will say something obscure, and we're like, all right, well, whatever. Like,
what was it the one time?
Look at that. And then we look up what professionals say afterwards, and we're like, holy shit, you were right.
Yeah, it was creme brulee.
Creme brulee,
I will tell you, there's some people out there that are just incredible.
Yeah. Oh my God, man! I watched some of these reviews, and I'm like, where is he getting this from?
I know we were, I introduced him as he walked by as Cameron Talley, our head of operations, and that guy has a palate that I just dream about having, right? And I know we were doing something one day. We were going through something, and there was an off flavor. So it was, low wine. Sometimes that first distillation, there's some stuff in there that's not. That's why you distill it again to get some of those things out that you don't want. Make it a little cleaner. And we're all sitting there and we're smelling it. It's me and two other distillers, and I'm like, it's kind of, I don't know. I couldn't put my name, and they couldn't do it either. And Cameron walks in the door, and he sits down. And he goes, "Oh, is this the low wine that we were having trouble with yesterday?" I said, "Yeah." And he pulls it up and he smells it, and he goes, "Oh, it's Campbell's tomato soup." So, first of all, let's break this down. He didn't just say soup. He said tomato soup. And he didn't just say tomato soup. He said Campbell's tomato soup. And I'm looking at these other, two people, and her and this other guy kind of look at me, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's Campbell's tomato soup!" Like,
he
and he just
nailed
walked
it.
out. He just walked out. He's like, "Yeah, that's it." And walked out.
So badass, mic drop, just walks out, explosion behind
I
him.
remember being like, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy," And now
some people have it, man.
Yeah, and every once in a while, and that was like a one-off thing. Like, it never happened again. It was just basically there was a piece of grain stuck in one of the pipes, and they just cleaned it out, and it was fine after that. And every once in a while I go back and I'm like, "Hey, you got any of that Campbell's tomato soup wine in here?" And it's like, no, of course not. I don't know. It's one of those things I'll never be able to get over.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That's really cool.
Let me ask you this real quick. So you're having a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys picked out a name?
We have.
Okay.
We have.
So you're ready.
So Meadow.
Okay.
Her name's
I
Meadow.
like that.
So we're big hikers, we're big outdoors people, and there was one of the guys who was like, "Man, tomato soup? Are you serious?" He's like, "I can't believe it."
I can't believe this guy.
Greg, poor Greg, and I really shot him down that day. So we're big hikers, we're big outdoors people, and when we started talking about last year, so we're all friends here. So last year, I lost my brother. Very quickly. It was very, very sudden, and I remember. We had talked about kids before, and it was never something we were thinking really about doing. And I lost my brother, and it was just like, I gotta have kids. You know. And so we're walking in the woods, and I said something to Kyla about it. And we walked out of the woods, and we walked out, and there was a clearing, and that's some of our favorite parks, especially here in Kentucky, which has such great state parks. And Indiana across the river, they're really, really amazing state parks, and we love when we're in the middle of the woods and we walk out, and there's like a clearing. It's just kind of like nature kind of does this sort of sigh or breath of relief or something, and I said, that would be a great name if we had a daughter, was Meadow. And my wife just like bust out into tears, and she was so happy to hear it.
That's awesome.
And so we knew from day one it was going to be Meadow. Now the middle name has been quite the journey. I think we've landed on it. We've pretty much landed on it. I really like Juliana.
Okay.
Meadow Juliana.
Okay.
She's due in August, but I'm telling you right now, I think my baby girl is going to be born in the end of July. So
okay. Yeah, all right.
It is,
Okay.
So yeah, we've really kind of nailed Meadow Juliana. And
I like that.
It's
It's beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
And it has meaning.
And
too.
meaning.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Again, you're a storyteller, right? That's very easy talking to you for 5 minutes to know that you're a storyteller.
Yeah,
and I think
you really
that's
paint a
really
picture.
cool, though. I mean, I always said about naming children is you never know how many people you dislike until you have to name a child.
Yes. It's amazing, isn't it? It's so
Because you
freaking
can
true.
find something wrong with every single name, right? Like you can be like, oh, you know, Joe. Well, you remember that Joe?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, man.
When I was in
I'm like, I
third
could not
grade, he
stand
stole
that
my lunch
name.
That's my
money.
ex-girlfriend's name. You can't use that. And
It's true, man. Like it takes you back. It really does.
Yeah. So, but I think coming up with something with meaning, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's a really cool story. Like coming out of the woods after you unfortunately lost your brother. I'm super sorry about that, but like. That's a really cool story, but like for anyone else too, like it can just be, man, that was my grandpa's name.
Yeah.
Or that was my sister's best
Absolutely. A lot of
friend.
people do
You know
that.
what I
There's
mean?
nothing wrong with it. I
can
mean,
be anything,
sometimes it could
but
just
like,
sound good and you want to do it, right?
yeah,
True,
sure,
true.
but like it is such an like it's such an intense job of naming a child, right? Like
They're stuck with the rest of their
and
life.
like you don't think about that like when hey, let's have kids. Like you don't think about like what a responsibility just naming a child is. Like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, they're going to go through their whole life with that name. And
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta
and-
make sure it
and
works.
Also, when the first name is Meadow, the middle name becomes even more problematic because my
True.
wife was like,
True.
what about Rose? And I was like, well, then it just sounds like a rose in the middle of meadow, you know?
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
you can't use like any nouns.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
I was like, I don't want her to sound like a meadow rose. I was like, I don't know. Because then you start thinking about like, your name kind of shapes you a little bit.
Absolutely.
It really does. And I'm like, man, Meadow Rose, I don't know. She's going to be living in the desert, I think. You know?
Yeah. I went like the more like presidential names of my kids. I feel like
I remember us saying like okay,
Samuel, Andrew, and then I have Benjamin, John. It's like,
Yes.
and then like I mean I don't know. We're like, I mean my son Sam when he was born we had different names. We didn't even know. Like we had like a list of names. We're like we don't even really know. And my wife was like. Brody was a name, and he was born, and I'm like, this is not a Brody at all.
That's
I'm
what
like,
I
this
keep
is like,
hearing
I'm
from
like,
people. Yeah.
we saw him. I'm like, that's Sam.
yeah,
Right there.
You
That's
do know, that's so weird too. Is you know,
I'm like, he looks like a Sam to me.
Not like the first instant. It's more to me, at least in my experience. It was like 6 hours later, like. Everyone's heart rate's down.
Yeah, he's
right? Like,
finally
we're back to
relaxed a little
normal.
bit.
And you're not really relaxing, but you're also not terrified at this point. Like
There's a
most of
child
the
there, you're
doctors
just
and
kinda
nurses
chilling.
have gone, and like you're just kind of like staring at this child that you made, right? And like, cause I remember my daughter's name is Sloan.
I came.
She was.
You guys didn't have a name yet. I
didn't have
showed
a
up late. Like I was at my house. I was digging like a hole for my patio. I'm just sitting there doing yard work. Yeah, this is man stuff, you know, like whatever. So
not a big deal.
So I get the
work
text
out.
from Ian like that, or I get a phone call from Ian. Yeah, I work out. You guys didn't know that. Ian calls me and tells me everything, and he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Hey, you know what?" I'm like, "I'm gonna take a shower real quick." It was like 10 o'clock at night.
think it
I'm
was
out in the
later
backyard.
than
Yeah. I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna come up there. Is that cool?" He's like, "Yeah, come on up." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I show up at the hospital, and I'm holding her, and he's like, "We're like," and his wife Chelsea's like, "We don't know. We can't think of what's a namer." You know, and they named a few names, and like said Sloan, and I'm like, "I like Sloan. I really like Sloan. I think that's a good name." And I don't think they made the decision based on. You know what? I'd say it was because-
Steve
it's because of me.
named my daughter. Yeah, 100%. No, like she was supposed to be Marin.
Yeah.
Marin was supposed to be her name. Like we had done the months and months of like going back and forth and narrowing down, and like that was it. And she came out, and I'm like, Chelsea, she's not Marin.
Yeah,
I don't know what
it's
to tell
tough though.
you.
We've got a few backups just in case.
You have to.
You know,
Like-
we've had a few because my wife has said the same thing. She's like, what if she's not a Meadow? And I'm like, well, then she's going to be little Rudy or something. I don't know. We'll
Right,
figure it
right.
out.
You
right?
figure- you
Yeah,
do.
We'll figure it out.
My son Ben was hours later. So, quick story. Like at 20 weeks, we found out my son Ben, the second one, had a heart condition, and so we knew something was wrong. Like you go through the ultrasounds and everything like that. The first time around, like you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? You know, he's pointing at everything. He's like, this is this, is that. You know,
Like, no, it isn't.
I'm like, I don't know what. I'm like, I don't see anything. You know, I don't know what the hell that
believe
is.
you.
Yeah, this guy's full of shit. So the second time around with Ben, they were just like focused on one spot, and it was like 10 minutes. You know, at first it was like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is taking a long time. Then it was 10 minutes. I'm like, and I'm starting to sweat. And then he goes, we have to get a second opinion. There's something a little off with his heart. And I'm like, what the fuck is
Yeah.
Okay, so they sent us somewhere else to get a second opinion. And sure enough, we found out he had a heart condition. fast forward, everything was okay. But anyway, when he was born, I mean, we had to go through open heart surgery and all that. It was a long road with him. When he was born, we sat there, and they took him away from us real quick. Like as soon as he was born, we got to hold him for a minute, and like they were like, zip him out of there. So my wife and I were sitting there, like, well, what should we do with his name? I'm like, I don't freaking know what his name is. Like, I mean, usually you could focus on only the name.
Yeah.
But like for us, we're like thinking of all the other stuff that's going on. Like they're taking our baby away. They're gonna go do open heart surgery in a couple of days. Like this is insane. But we couldn't figure out like what we were gonna name him. Like Ben was there. Benjamin was an option. And finally, like maybe the next morning, we were like, I think it's Ben. Because they kept coming. They're like, so do you guys have a name yet? Like they have their, the pen and paper. Like, like, no, come back.
What is wrong with you?
It's like being at a restaurant. You know, like, are you ready to order? Like, give me a few more minutes.
We got people waiting here. Come on.
Come back in a few minutes. We might have it. So like finally, like hours later, next morning, we're like, okay, yeah, it's Benjamin. It's Ben. Yeah. So.
And he's such a Ben.
He is a Ben.
But I mean, it is crazy though. Like that couple hours afterwards, up to even a day later, and like Steve. Like Sloan was like 5th or 6th on my list. I was like, I am not into Sloan.
I'll tell you what, I wasn't because you guys had thrown it out there, and we're very close. Like our families are very close, and our wives are best friends. Like it's pretty cool. So, and they threw the name Sloan out there, and I'm like, I could think of his entourage.
Entourage, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know about Sloan. And then I'm holding her there, and I'm like, I think Sloan fits.
Yeah.
I think she just looks like
it's
a Sloan.
Crazy how they.
You look at them and you're
Even
like,
that
name.
new?
Yeah, and you could just put it with
that
them.
new, dude.
Like they're barely a person,
Yeah.
And that's
I was
so
like
cool.
with Sam, it was like, I'm like, Brody? I'm like, he's not a Brody. I'm like, he doesn't look like a
I
bro.
think I said that to you. I'm like, dude, I ain't no
he's
Brody.
not a Brody. I'm
And
like,
then,
yeah, you're
because I
right.
didn't know about Sam as a backup, or not even a backup, but as another option. I was like, oh my god, because what I say, he looks presidential or something.
Yeah,
like that. I'm like, he looks like a Sam, like
Samuel
a strong
Andrew.
Sam, yeah.
So like my middle name is Andrew. That's my grandfather's name, and I just love that name for a middle name. I think that was a good middle name for him. And my wife's grandfather's name was John. So that's what we went with Ben. And like, so we're like my third one. I have no freaking clue.
Sounds like you'll figure it out. I
can't. I'm like, it has to be something along the lines of Sam and Ben, like those like classic, like quick, three letters like Ben and Sam. It's like, I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out. That's
maybe it'll be something really off the wall.
Yeah, like
Archibald.
Javier, Jamal. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. Cornelius.
Dude, you should totally be Cornelius.
Something about Cornelius just really gets me.
I think if any baby ever comes out and it looks like a Cornelius, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, seriously, man. I'm like, I don't know. The doctor's like, Cornelius, okay. He starts writing it. He gets to C. You sure? How about Christopher? I got the C. I didn't go any further than that.
It is a lot of pressure naming kids, though, man.
It is. We've been talking about it for 9 months or 8 months.
Right.
Like I'm like, I don't know.
Well, because we're almost at the point now, and I don't know if it's a social media thing or it's just like how much more connected the world is, but like you can't get away with anything.
No.
So like. So I'm in childcare as my real job, but like, so I see it was really hard for us to come up with names because
you've seen them
you
all.
see a lot.
I mean, I take care of
kids,
literally 240 something kids right now.
Yeah.
Like I see all of them, right? And so we know what the trends are. And I'm like, well, we can't do that. I have like 9 Aidens and we have like,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
And but like you start to understand and you start to see the trends and man, it becomes
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It can be a lot, but
I will say this: we have
story
a story behind it like that.
helps.
Meadow.
Yeah.
I think you stick with
It's
it.
beautiful.
I think I really, really dig it, and I already had my boy's name picked out too. So we'll see what happens
Okay,
next
there
time
you
we
go.
go around. Because I'm still holding on to that. She's not as big of a fan, but I feel like I let her have Meadow. She can let me have the second one. I don't know. I know it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah,
but
I was
you
gonna say.
you can just let me
You
drape
keep
that
on
dream
trying
for a
to-
while.
you know how it
Drape that
goes.
dream for another year or so. All right.
Here's what I
let's-
always say: when somebody asks me anything, we'll be having a party at our house, and somebody's like, "Hey, Steve, where's this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just work here. Ask Liz. She's got it all under control. I'm just working. I don't know anything else." And that's the way it goes. The wife has all the say in it. We could be honest
That's okay
here.
with me, honestly.
I
okay
told a young guy I work with. He just got married last summer, and he was talking about how things are changing and all that. I'm like, here's the deal: just let her tell you what to do, your life will become a lot easier. Yeah. I'm telling you, man.
That is the truth.
It is the truth. Like with marriage, it's like you're an
and by the
employee,
way-
you know, and it makes life a lot easier.
And by the way, that's not like a submission of like I don't care.
No.
What that is you saying I submit to.
I give up.
Well, listen,
yes, it's true.
yes. But no, it's more about like I don't need or I don't feel the need to be in charge of everything.
Absolutely.
And this is actually a team. This is actually because that's the only way it works. Yeah. At least in my experience.
I have to say, as a team, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Really? The wives might like to hear this part of the podcast.
Just link them to this part.
Yeah, but then we subject,
Fast forward to an hour.
If we say listen to this, then we subject ourselves to everything
Oh,
else.
man.
And
You're
like,
right.
I don't know if the trade-off's worth it.
You're right.
And when I first started kind of doing this role, and I've been doing podcasts and media like this and other roles, before this. And I remember being like, "Oh, honey, are you gonna listen to this?" And after a while, she's like, "No." She's like, "No, I hear your voice all day." She's like, "I don't need to hear it on my phone." And I'm like, "All right, no, that's fine."
You're like, but I
Fair
sound so much
enough.
better on a mic, though.
It does.
Oh yeah, way better.
I mean, I can't stand my
This
voice.
Boxer Grill is so freaking good.
I really enjoy it. It's so good.
I've
Mine's gone, of course, but
been savoring it.
Well,
good for you,
Savory.
man.
I'm gonna blow your mind with something. real
Please
quick,
do.
okay? So take that glass, and if you want to pour more, you can, or
No,
you can just
I can
use the
still
glass
smell it,
too.
yeah.
So I call this filling your snoot up. Give a nice snoot full. Just really smell. All right. So now, pick up the next one, and this is our gin, and smell it right away. And surprise, surprise, it smells like gin. It smells like
Right.
juniper berries and Christmas
Exactly.
trees, right? All right, so you ready for this? You're going to love this. So smell like the palm of your hand or the back of your hand, your wrist, something like that. What you're doing is you're using your own pH to reset your sense of smell. Your sense of smell is the most easily tired sense, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now after you've done that, go back to the gin, smell the gin again and see how sweet it is.
Very, like citrusy or something.
Yeah.
Like the
So
Wow.
what you did is, this is a gin that we've aged in the Boxer Grill barrels. That's why it has that color to it and that smell. What you did is you kind of blinded your nose to the barrel, and then you smelled the gin and you just got the base spirit.
yes.
And you see how beautiful that base spirit is, right?
Yeah.
And then when you reset, you go back, I think you really discover how important the barrel is, how much it informs that change of flavor. And that's why really we call this Bespoke Gin. It's a barrel-aged London dry gin that we've taken that gin. We don't make the gin here. We get that from London, England. It comes from the oldest gin distillery in London. They send it to us, no shit, at 195 proof. I'm not joking.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cheaper to ship that way. But what that allows us to do is add our water to it. We add Kentucky water to it. So now you're changing it that way. And then we're putting it in those empty rye barrels for about 6 months. And we're really putting our fingerprint on it. We're bespoke tailoring it for the whiskey community. And think of it this way. This is an 89 proof, let's be honest, cocktail spirit that you can drink neat. It tastes like limoncello and Earl Grey tea.
Oh, I freaking love limoncello. Listen, I am not a gin guy.
I'm from Kentucky, buddy. You better believe I'm not. But now,
But I mean,
I don't
like,
know.
I don't do martinis. I don't do like, and I've tried.
But here's what I'll say
Like,
about this.
not for me.
It doesn't smell like your typical. And
This is
I said it
limoncello.
tastes.
You said like,
Yeah.
It reminds me.
So
of
here's
like,
the deal. Gin, I had a hard time with for a very, very long time. I had a rough time, a really
one of
bad
those.
night when I was younger.
I think
We had a lot
everybody
of
has a
gin.
similar
You know,
story.
we've all been there.
Yeah.
To the point where I couldn't smell it. This, I don't get it. You know, I don't have that, like, it hits me and I'm like, oh, like that pine,
Like the botanicals are still there because
they're there.
It's still gin,
but it's very subtle.
Yes.
And it's not overpowering. There's something, this is more refreshing.
Yeah.
It's that citrus that I'm getting a lot of, especially on the nose. And then
Check out the drips, bro.
Look at those cathedral windows. My goodness.
but
Yeah,
man,
I mean,
that is good.
Just like everything else in this distillery, we don't chill filter this either. There's no reason to.
Yeah.
And so it's still, I mean, how often can you use this descriptor for gin? It's creamy.
Yes, creamy is a good way.
creaminess to it.
That is a good way to put that.
And that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of people that drink gin neat. This one you can kind of do. And even with cocktails, talk about simplicity. I mean, just club soda and an orange slice. It's delicious.
It's perfect.
It's really, really good.
No,
And I
this
love
neat
doing it
is not
right
bad.
next
I
to
would
the box
never,
cover, you know?
ever do gin neat.
No.
I mean, I'll be honest. That night that I was drinking gin, that I can remember vividly. Yeah, it was straight out of the bottle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it was chugging, and
You're right. That's creamy.
Man, if
this
I ever,
is creamy.
if I ever
This
see
is.
people drinking gin directly off the bottle, I'm like,
I was young, man. Okay.
Everything okay at home? Like, what's going on?
We didn't, you know, it was Natty Light or the bottle that my buddy stole from his dad.
Tough choice.
You know, it was like, all right, well, I'm getting after it. We did. I mean, there was like 3 of us, and we just polished that thing off. And this is,
So this is like
this is really good.
crisp on the nose,
Yes,
and then creamy is such
creamy
a good
is the
way
best way to
of-
put this, I think, and refreshing though.
Yeah.
It's that citrus to it is. I mean, I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but really though, it's very.
Well, it is
very
It's that-
refreshing.
It's that meringue. It's that like creamy, like dessert, but that cold dessert. It's
Yeah.
not the warm pie.
Meringue.
It's
No, this has a refreshing kind of bright quality to it.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you know, we don't. So that distillery that makes this gin for us, they keep their botanicals kind of close to their chest, but we're informed enough that we can figure out. You know, they're definitely putting, you know, other than juniper, they're also putting, you know, citrus in that basket.
Yeah.
Right? They're putting. There's definitely like some sort of like rosemary or tea leaves and orris root. I mean, those kind of classic gin botanicals. They're definitely in there, but I think the barrel really brings out the citrus that was already in here.
Yeah.
It kind of mutes that juniper a little bit. It's still there to let you know that it's gin,
It's subtle.
but it's, it really helps bring out some of those other flavors that make this such a beautiful product. And then, I mean, just the color alone on it.
It's cool.
Right? I mean, it looks like Sauvignon Blanc almost. I mean,
Yeah.
It really does.
it's such an alluring spirit, and I tell people this. You know, a lot of my job is dealing obviously with media, but also trade, and I tell retailers, you put this in somebody's glass, they'll buy the bottle every time.
Yeah.
Because they're just so amazed that they can drink gin neat. It's a sipping gin.
My
True.
my
That's very true.
mother-in-law's a big gin fan.
Grab a bottle on the
Guess
way
what
out.
she's getting?
Yeah, guess what she's getting. Absolutely. This is good,
Seriously,
man.
though.
I could never imagine drinking gin
Yeah.
neat.
No.
And that was
If you wouldn't have poured it, there's no way I would have been like, hey, let me get a little taste.
because
of
here's
that.
the deal. Because here's the deal. Even if I didn't like it, there's no way in hell I would have finished that.
Right.
That was good, man. That was
It's
really
a
good.
really solid drink. It's a really
it's really
solid
good.
drink.
So that's I'm trying to look up there. Oh, okay, I see the
It's
bottle. there.
that round.
Yeah, right there. Was that what I was upstairs at the bar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gin's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's got, the bottle has like a herringbone. It used to be, I think there's like a few of them around here
see the
somewhere.
one, but-
you see one. So it used to be in bottles just like this.
Okay.
But we felt like the gin needed its own kind of identity.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then we started thinking about that idea of, you know, like having this bespoke tailoring of like a raw spirit, right? And we put herringbone on the outside of the bottle because it's kind of like, you know, herringbone patterns on like
Yeah.
a suit. And I don't know, the whole sort of everything kind of came together on that.
Yeah.
What I really liked. Yeah.
It's
really
really
nailed
good.
it.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm kind of lost for how I'm supposed to feel about it because I don't like gin.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
But okay, I'll try it. Yeah, like that was great. So
Hey,
I'm
so
excited.
there's something else we do here with our podcast. In every episode, we have what's called a dad hack. Okay, so Ian and I could give you one because I don't think you're going to have one yet.
Not
So
yet.
we could try to fill you in. And mine, I've used this a lot with people. This is from the beginning. And this won't happen until she's older, when she's really kicking and really moving around a lot. When
quicker than you think, though.
That is true. It's going to happen fast. Trying to put clothes on them. Like, for example, a onesie.
Yeah.
So, like, trying to get their legs into that onesie to try to get them to... So, here's the deal. So, when you're putting a onesie on a child, and they're kicking their legs around and they're going crazy, and you get one on, and what's going to happen is they're going to kick it off.
Okay.
It's inevitable because their legs are constantly moving. So
By the way, hold on 1 second. This is a problem that you don't know is going to be a problem that no one will tell you about. No, it's not in any parenting book.
Yep.
Like, this actually happens.
This does happen. This is a real thing.
This is the reason we came up with the whole idea of doing dad hacks because, oh shit, no one told me like this was going to take up hours of my life.
It really, yeah. When you put it all together, it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
So when you're putting the onesie on, so what you want to do is the first leg, grab that pant leg and push it all the way up to the top of her thigh.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to make sure that she doesn't kick it off. And then the second one you pull on will be much easier. Because I'm telling you, when she starts kicking her legs, and I mean, they do. I mean, they're going boom, boom, back and forth.
So just to put it in perspective, the natural thing to do is to roll up both pant legs and just like put it around their ankles and then like go up.
Or just do one
Or
and
just do one at a time, like up to the knee, and then like just try and put the other one on.
Try to. I'm telling you, roll it all the way up to her thigh, and then put the second one on. And I'm telling you, it'll save you so much time.
Excellent.
That's a dad hack for you.
Excellent.
And I remember him telling me this, and I was like, dude, that's not even that big of a problem. Like, you're not solving anything that, like, and then, like, I did it. And this was...
That's going to be Sloan.
Sloan.
Yeah, it's got to be Sloan.
And I was like, oh, my God. Like, that was 30 seconds when usually it takes me, like, 7 minutes to dress my child.
Well, here's the deal. I didn't figure this out until it was, like, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And Ben's is going freaking crazy. He's kicking his legs. I'm like, oh, my God. Just, you know, because you put it on, you're half asleep.
Yeah.
Your eyes are closed. You're like, when he kicks it off, you're like, oh, my God, I cannot put this thing on. Slide it all the way up. Boom. Boom, you're done.
Yeah.
And it works like a charm.
Little things like that are just...
I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll use
seriously.
it eventually.
What's funny is you'll not remember it, and then like, because it'll be 6, 7, 8 months, something like that, when they really start getting to where they can kick, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's early. I can't remember. It's hard for me
I need to start remembering because I'm about to have one.
But one day, it's going to be a pain in the ass to put your daughter's pants on her, and you'll be like, wait a minit here.
And this isn't just onesies, this is pants,
and you're gonna
everything.
like text us, and you'll be like, dude,
worked like a charm. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, it'll work for you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So take that one with you.
I appreciate
100%.
that.
Ian, you have anything for the early ages?
All right. So this is something that
I'm putting you on the spot.
no, that's okay. Here's something to remember. The hardest stage of parenting is the one you're in.
Okay.
So a lot of parenting, what I've found and what we've talked about quite a bit, is understanding the situation you're in, whether it's you're learning how to feed solid foods or in the very beginning you feel helpless because maybe you guys are breastfeeding, maybe you're not, it doesn't really matter. Like whatever it is, you're as a man are going to feel helpless in the beginning because mom just does a ton. So, number one, you're a go-getter.
Yeah.
Get water, get that extra pillow, get the TV remote, run to the store, whatever it is you need to do, be the go-getter. But, like, in the grand scheme of things, as your daughter gets older, or you have more kids or whatever, the hardest stage of parenting is the one that you're in. Because you are going to learn what you need to know. You're going to then adapt. And as soon as you've adapted, you're going to have to learn something new.
True story.
So be flexible, right?
It's you know, I was in the Marine Corps, and we always used to say semper gumby, like be flexible, and you will dump the information. Like once you need to learn something else, you'll dump all that other stuff, and then when you have another one, you'll be like, oh, I remember this now.
Yeah, it comes back to you.
And it's just understanding that, you know, you'll hear a lot about terrible twos or. Terrible twos is always the big one, and I always say that's my favorite age.
3.
Looking back at 3 is the worst. 3
The worst.
Like my daughter's about to turn 4 in July, and I cannot wait. like a magic light switch is gonna flip, you know. But like, no, everything that you're doing right now is going to be the hardest part of it, and then you'll learn something new, and then while you're in it, you're gonna like that's the hardest part of it. And I imagine, and we've talked to dads, you know, again, kids in their 20s and 30s. There's different challenges that you have to overcome and you have to adapt to, and it's gonna seem like the hardest thing, but 2 years ago, 6 months ago, a day ago, you thought that was the hardest.
True story.
So if you put all that into perspective, what that really means is that you just need to roll with it and do the best you can, as long as you're loving that kid and you know, working together with your wife, you guys are going to be just fine.
I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
See, I knew I invited you on here for a reason. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You could get a hold of us anytime.
Well, hopefully in the next year or so, I'll have my own dad hack I can
There
pass
you go.
along.
Absolutely, man,
Absolutely.
for sure.
I told him I'm going to reinvent the wheel.
Well,
Hey,
you know what?
you
never
come up
know,
with something, though,
like,
man,
You
like-
come up with things
Yeah.
that are just like, oh my God, this works. No one's ever told me about this. I gotta spread the word.
I know
you
somebody tried to tell me I was always having. So I've got 2 dogs, and one of them's a beagle, and he's 15 years old, and then one's a Boston Terrier beagle mix, and cutting their nails.
Mhm.
So the Boston isn't too bad. He'll kind of let us do it, but Pork Chop is the old. Beagle.
Pork Chop, I love it. Doug.
Oh, man, he's
Dude,
absolutely,
dude.
absolutely. Yeah, no, you know exactly where I'm coming from. And so he's so stubborn. And so my friend had showed me this video, and this person was clipping her dog's nails, and she had a plate, like a paper plate on her head. She like rubber banded her head and put a huge gob of
Peanut butter.
right? And I was like, oh, that's brilliant, because the dog was
Yeah.
only interested.
That's
in
all they're
peanut butter.
focused on.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I don't know if you've ever smelled a 15-year-old beagle's breath. That was step one. It was really bad, and I was like, okay, almost done. I can get through it. And then, of course, he's licking the peanut butter, and it starts to get runny, and a piece of that peanut butter fell into my mouth.
Oh,
And it was like from his mouth, and I was like, I just ripped that thing off, and I was like, all right, I'm sitting on you. We're just gonna get this done.
Yeah, we're gonna do it the other way. We're going back to
At
the
some point,
original
do
way.
you like just like have an out of body experience and say, "Look at what I've become," with a paper plate
ridiculous.
attached to my head?
With peanut
And I
butter.
was like gagging a little
Yeah,
bit 'cause
right.
his breath was so bad. And I remember Kyla was there, and she's like looking at me as I'm doing it, just dying.
Of
'Cause
course.
she thought it was the funniest thing ever. And then, of course, I'm like, God, his breath is so bad. Oh, it's just death. It's so bad, And then that peanut butter just ran down in my
God.
mouth. And she lost it. She
Yep.
thought that was the funniest thing that had ever happened. And so, yeah, teamwork is great, but I got to tell you what, she could have helped out a little more.
Yeah, she's sitting back taking videos of you. I'm sending this one out to all of her friends.
That moment. Oh, man, I just...
Oh, that's funny.
That's
God,
brutal.
I think I was doing it in the bathroom. Bad.
Yeah, dog dad hack.
Yeah.
Go to the vet.
Yeah, go to the vet. Have them
Yeah,
just
go to those
do the
places where they have the
50
Dremel and they can
Yeah,
take care of it
it's
for you.
worth it.
I
Yeah.
could just sedate them,
Oh man.
give them 2 Benadryl, and then do it.
Seriously, man, that's always a pain in the ass. That's why, we do the same thing. We take ours to like PetSmart or something
yeah.
to go do it because
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't.
There's no way.
Yeah,
There's
my
no way
grandma
I'm ever gonna do it.
Yeah,
'Cause
not worth it.
I think when I was younger, we had a dog, and I clipped her nails, and I went too short,
Oh, it's rough.
and I felt so terrible. She was miserable, and I'm like, okay, that's it. Never doing it again.
No.
I've never clipped nails. You want to know something else? Kids, babies, clipping their nails is terrifying.
We've talked about that because I remember my mother, one of the things she's given us, it was this little set, and it was like tiny little nail clippers. And my wife gave it to me, and I was like, what is this for? I was like, why do I need tiny nail clippers? And she was like, the baby. And I was like, you have to clip a baby's nails? She's like, yes, Adam. She's going to cut her eye open or something.
Or
And
yours.
I'm looking at, yeah, right.
Dude, they get.
They are
And I'm looking
little
at this little thing, and
razor
I'm like,
blades.
I have like big sausage fingers. Like, I don't know. And so I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, I think this is the thing that you're going to be in charge of.
I think
what?
And it's paying her back for the peanut butter incident.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Yeah, that's a. Ooh. So Gibbs. So my son's name is Gibson, and he to this day he's going to be 6 next month. He hates getting his nails done, clipped. Like he
Does he really?
Oh my God, he will like, and he is not a anxious kid. He is not a shy kid. He is very outgoing, You put some nail clippers in front of him, he will like shut her down. It's so funny to me. I'm like, dude, you're like Mr. Dance, and talk to anybody that comes around. He shuts down. It is so funny to me.
Does he like peanut butter?
Yeah, there you go. Dad hack.
Don't do it.
Button.
Don't do
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say.
Button. I'm gonna do it. I am doing it. That's amazing.
That's so good.
Put it on the front of your shirt. Or
Go to
something,
McDonald's,
though,
grab some chicken nuggets.
Yes.
Get a Happy Meal.
Great. Oh man,
Like,
that's
man.
brilliant. I'm gonna do that.
I'll tell you what, man. Yeah, that and bribing your children too.
Oh yeah.
I do it every day.
No shame.
I mean, every single day. I'm like trying to get them out, for school. I'm like, if you get in the car, I will give you So we do our vitamins. They have the little gummies, and I'm like, all right, you get in the car, and I'll give you your vitamins when you get in there. He'll go in there. He'll put a seatbelt on and everything. I'm like, here you go.
Hey, that's like 2 fronts there. You get them his vitamins and them in the
See,
car.
and they're like, oh,
Nice.
they love their vitamins. It's like candy.
Oh yeah.
We thought Flintstones vitamins were great. What they got today? Or
Oh, they're phenomenal. The gummies are
I'm
phenomenal.
not gonna lie. I actually
I've
tried
tried
the
them.
gummies.
Yeah,
and they're great.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah,
I'll pop a
100%.
couple in too. I'm like, oh, this is great. It's like candy. It's the truth. All right,
All right, last one.
last one here.
So, man, I
I
gave you
gotta ask.
the shortest
I
pour
gotta ask.
ever.
What did I do to
I
you?
don't know, man. I'm so sorry.
Wow, Ian.
Honestly, I
It was
looking
during
at
the
Rick, I was
tour.
wow,
He's like, this guy's an
already drinking.
asshole over
I
here.
don't know.
Yeah, this one needs to be cut off.
Okay, I get it.
So this is Derringer. This is our sherry cask. So this is a wheated bourbon. This is 68% corn, 18% wheat, 14% malted barley. It's aged. So this one has normal aging in the charred white oak American barrels, and then we do a secondary aging on this, and it actually goes into a sherry cask.
Okay.
So a Pedro in a sherry cask for about 6 months, and I will tell you, I don't even know if I needed to say that, because when you smell it, I mean, it's obviously some sort of finish on it, right?
Yeah.
This one is
Smells
pretty
so good.
special.
I have not had this.
Yes, you have.
Have I really? No, we have.
By the way, we do this all the time. He's like, oh, I've never had that. I'm like, yeah, you have.
We've done so many reviews, I can't keep track.
James Schleicher, episode 18, 20,
Oh,
something
God.
like.
Well, that was years
Billy,
ago.
So this was.
Wow, are you like Rain Man? You're like, it was 3
Yeah,
a.m.
episode 18.
There was 4 birds outside.
Yeah,
our buddy
a car drove
Billy-
by at 8 o'clock.
So I only remember it because it was the very first episode that somebody sponsored the bottle that we were going to be drinking. So we had no idea what it was going to be.
Right, okay.
He shows up with this sherry cask finished bourbon, and I'm like, dude, you got to bringing me this? Whatever, we'll drink it. And I remember we drank the bottle.
Yeah, you're right. I do remember that now. Okay, so
And
I
he
had
goes,
it.
dude, that was kind of an expensive bottle. He's like, I was kind of hoping to take
Yeah, well,
you
sorry.
probably
You
should
shouldn't have brought it in. You know us. You know how we do this.
But yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, this one is, I mean, it's special. I mean, you think, people talk about finish on, the palate. This is a finish on the nose. On the nose, it's the sherry, so it's dried fruit.
Yeah.
And then you pull it away, and it's bourbon. You get, the vanilla and the oak. But when you taste it, it's backwards. You get the wheated bourbon first. It's silky, it's soft, it's oaky, it's vanilla, it's caramel and butterscotch. And then you hit this wall of dark chocolate. And I'll tell you guys, that is when the bourbon barrel ends and the sherry cask begins. Because then it is just fruit, like stone fruit and dried fruits like fig and apricot and cherry, raisin even. And then you start getting into crazy things like more black tea, marzipan and almond. There's even this hint of it's after you take the drink, the finish, when you breathe out, it kind of tastes like you just smoked a cigar. It has that sort of smoky sort of finish to it.
Yeah.
So this is one. There's a few that I've run into where this is gonna sound crazy. I would be okay just nosing it.
This
Yes.
I call this my desert island smelling bourbon because I could smell this the rest of my life and be
Yeah,
happy.
it smells phenomenal.
There are whiskeys out there that I'm like, oh man, I gotta drink this, and that's a testament to the nose on the bourbon. But This,
That's all you need.
I want to drink it and I'm going to drink it, but I don't need to.
You can live on the nose of this.
This smells phenomenal.
So good.
And I mean, I'm telling you, a cigar with this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
A cigar with this is unbelievable.
I'm telling you,
Thinking of
man.
an
So he
Ecuador,
hasn't
like
had a
little
cigar
bit
in a long
darker.
time.
I had one a couple weeks ago.
Did you really? How did you feel?
Great. I was
Okay,
fine.
so we should have got cigars today when we were
I
at the
know. Well,
what's
we
that place?
could. There's some time.
Party. What the hell is
Party
it?
Source?
Party
I
Source.
took one to Party Source for the first time.
Oh,
I've never been there before.
yeah.
Oh my
That's a
god.
nice place. I'll tell you, you want to have a great time. Right across the river is this place. It's called Match. It's a cigar and bourbon bar.
Okay.
That is like my go-to. That is
All
my
right.
go-to hangout. I love that place. They've got a humidor there. They've got really good people there, and they've got a great bourbon selection. They make a really good old-fashioned too. But this is the cigar bourbon.
Okay.
This is the cigar bourbon.
That that almond nutty but
I mean, you really want to ramp that up? Get a cup of like black coffee or espresso. Take a drink of that, and then take a drink of this. The
I can
almond
imagine.
becomes so strong it tastes like amaretto.
Oh man.
It tastes like
So that's the kind of stuff we need to figure out, man. Like talking about cigars. So we've been talking about like pairing things.
yeah,
We should start doing stuff like that.
that would be good.
Like with the coffee and everything like that.
I mean, we think about that a lot. I mean, it's not, you think a lot about that with wine and even beer, about pairings, and the whiskey world's been kind of lagging behind in the last couple of years on that. You know, Rabbit Hole, we're the official sponsors of the James Beard Foundation for that reason. We think, if I can use a made-up word, culinarily about it, right? I mean, the Cave Hill is like, it's the Cabernet. It needs big, bold, savory dishes. The High Gold's a little more, it's like the Pinot Noir. It's a little more reserved. Like, you know, this is pork tacos or sliders or pork
I was
roast,
gonna say
right?
pork chop.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Like a good seared pork chop.
Yeah,
yeah.
some
yeah.
of these big savory
Yeah.
meats, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this white chicken chili, like I actually make a white chicken chili where I deglaze the onions with this, and so it's got a little more nuance. Or like things with like hatch green chili, you know, it's like got the sweet kind
hungry.
of.
I'm
right?
starving now.
Well, you're welcome. The Boxer Grail, I mean, it's amazing with like Latin cuisine or even Indian
I was
cuisine.
gonna say tacos.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
great with Latin cuisine. And then this, I mean, this is charcuterie. This is charcuterie plate, right? Or you can do
Okay.
it with chocolate cake. You do this with chocolate, it tastes like a chocolate covered cherry.
That's your dessert right there.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
All I can think about now is what we're gonna get to eat after this.
Yep.
Oh,
You're in a good
We
area.
always talk about food.
You're in
yeah,
a good
I was gonna
area.
say. I think I saw this place across the street.
Big yellow building?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's called Bodegita de Mimi. It is, or Bodegita de Mimima, I think. It's
It's a place I passed up and I'm like, that place looks
Cuban
interesting.
place.
Yes.
It's really
Ooh.
good. So that
The
place
Cuban
is
in it?
great. There's actually, I mean, there's a Royals hot chicken right here that everyone at the distillery eats at. You've got Mayan Cafe. That's actually me and my wife's favorite restaurant in Louisville. It's like indigenous Mexican food with a Kentucky flair. If you go to Mayan Cafe, you're gonna think I'm crazy. You have to get the lima beans. It's unbelievable. The lima beans are unbelievable. There's Feast Barbecue right down the way. I mean, there's amazing places. Yeah, the lima beans. I'm telling you.
All right, I'll take your word for
nuts. It's nuts. They're buttery, and man, they're incredible. They're incredible.
it. All right. I'm gonna take your word for it.
You are in an I mean, really, Louisville overall. I think it's starting to become known, but it's been like this best kept culinary secret the last 10
cool.
years or so.
Yeah.
The food in Louisville is unreal. We
That's
have
awesome.
an unreal culinary scene here.
That's really great. Oh man, I can't not smell. Like I don't want to finish this.
Yeah. Well, you got another bottle right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have some more if you'd like. I mean, you got a few bottles sitting in front of you. Take your pick.
Adam, what else is going on with Rabbit Hole? Because I can't tell you how. And so, in all fairness, part of it is COVID said that we couldn't travel for like
Yeah,
a year,
true.
right? Like, so this is really fun for us to be able to get out and accept the invitation to come out and come meet with you and all that kind of stuff, which is fun in itself. But being here, going through this amazing facility, seeing the architecture and the stories behind why the hallways are shaped a certain way, and you know what I mean? Like, it's all really, really cool. I'm excited to see. So over the last couple of years now, so we had, like you mentioned, the Founders Collection. So the Box of Grail Founders Collection.
Yeah.
And now there's the
Mizunara. So it's 15-year-old bourbon from some of Cave's personal collection. People like you and me, we collect bottles. Cave collects barrels of whiskey, which is just like amazing.
That's great.
And so he had these barrels of whiskey from a few different distilleries here in Kentucky, and he kind of extra aged them a little bit. I think he got them when they were like, 9 years old, 10 years old, something like that. He aged them up to 15 years, and he didn't really know what he was going to do with them. And I think his original thought was like, maybe I'm just going to share this out with friends and families. It was kind of like how Cave Hill started, right?
Yeah.
And so it was totally unrelated, but he was looking for Mizunara Japanese oak, which is really hard to get. It's very, very rare. It's very hard to make. It's very expensive. And it kind of happened the same week that he was tasting through these barrels that had hit about 15 years. And he was like looking at it. He's like, what if I take it and put it? So he's like, screw it. Let's just do it. He took some of those barrels of 15-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey, put it in the Mizunara Japanese oak cask for about a year, and they just turned out amazing.
Amazing. That goes back to the science and the art of making bourbon or making whiskey,
too,
right? Yeah, taking a chance.
and just the balls, right?
Absolutely. Because he's like, well, let's just go ahead and toss this in here and do this. And
I mean, it's one thing if you're going to put like some new, like 6-month-old, just came off. Just give this a whirl.
Which he did that too.
Sure.
I mean, he actually took some high gold, distillate, unaged high gold. He's thrown them in other Mizunara Japanese oak cask new ones. He's going to let them sit there for like 10 or 15 years. And he looks at me, he's like, I'm going to be like 75 when these are done, but let's see what happens. I'm like, I'm there for it.
That's
like,
amazing.
Absolutely, man. That's amazing.
That's so cool.
But yeah, we're going to do that twice a year. The Founders Collection, we're going to have one come out in the spring, one come out in the fall every single year. We're also, we just started our single barrel program.
Right.
That's brand new.
That's what he was labeling, right?
That's,
Yeah.
hand labeling for the first one that we'll release. Fred Minnick actually came in, great whiskey writer. What a hack, right?
Yeah, right.
Fred Minnick, this amazing whiskey writer and reviewer came in and selected the very first one, and we're going to sell them in the distillery. It's looking like June 14th, I think, which is National Bourbon Day.
May 14th.
Also,
is it today by chance?
What do you know?
Oh, weird.
So June 14th is National Bourbon Day. It's also my birthday, which is a
Oh,
total
wow.
coincidence. They didn't do
That's
that
why they
for
hired
me,
you.
Yeah, it's like my parents were like, it's gotta be tonight. But yeah, so I think we're gonna release it on that day, and we're gonna sell them out of the distillery, and all of the proceeds are gonna go to a local charity that pays directly into the pockets of hospitality. Here
that's
in Louisville,
awesome.
because that's the hardest hit industry for COVID, right?
For sure.
And so that's our first one. There's something like 10 barrels total this year, so it's all Kentucky only for this first year. Next year, we're really looking to expand that quite a bit.
Cool.
Like quite a bit into
That's
other
really
SKUs, because everything's high gold for right now. We're looking to expand to other labels as well.
That's awesome.
That's super cool.
So that's on the horizon, but we were kind of talking about other things going on. I mean, there's so many different barrels around this distillery, cognac and Armagnac and French oak barrels and tequila barrels and just different things that we're trying out to see. Those will probably be later releases.
Right.
There's something like 8 different bourbon mash bills that we have working right now, including the ones we've already released. Some single malts out there, 2 different rye. Just really interesting things on the horizon for us.
That's awesome,
That's
man.
really cool.
And it's not that all of those will work out.
No, of course not.
We do something like 5% of our production is really geared for experimentation.
Yeah.
And that's what this room is. This sensory lab. This is really
This is
where
such
that
a cool
happens.
room.
This
Yeah.
is really where it
Like-
happens. We're trying everything in here.
I don't know if like the do not enter or like no authorized access or whatever it says on the
Do not
front.
enter.
Do not enter. That just made me want to come in here more.
Absolutely.
So then-
and you're like, this is where we're going. I'm like, this is the spot.
Yeah.
Like, don't press
I'm
the
in.
big red button.
Yeah.
You're like,
Right.
I
If it was in
have to
front of me
press
right now,
that
I'd push it.
button. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just thinking about like the different experiments and the different like quality assurance that goes on in here, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. Like I'm looking at, I mean, there's some bottles that we had to turn around, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
just makes it that much more like.
Not that
sexy
we're trying to
me.
hide anything,
No.
everybody. We're just not ready to completely commit. I mean, because I can tell you, there's like a few bottles over there that I've tried, and I'm like,
Like there's glasses over there with just like an alphanumeric code on them, and I'm like, I want to know.
Which we have to remind ourselves what that is. We have to have it like on this board to be like, all right, that's January, got it. Like
but that's cool. Like I don't know,
it's a really fun part.
This is something that's like I don't know, not everyone gets to see, so it's pretty cool. Thank you so much.
So I figured we'd come in.
I really appreciate that, man.
I wasn't sure when you first came in, but I was like, okay.
These guys kind of seem like assholes. He's walking up to the door, he sees us like, oh, these guys look like dicks. I regret this.
What can I do for you today?
I should have left early.
No, this is amazing. Thanks so much for bringing us in and talking to us and really, I think, at least for me, I'm not going to speak for him, but like even more giving me the appreciation for what you guys are doing here. We've been trying to understand the industry a little bit more. We've been trying to, I guess, I want to understand the whiskey more, right?
For sure.
And I think coming to a place and seeing where it happens, seeing the love that's put in, and seeing these people at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night on a Friday just putting the work in, and then I don't know, just like the stories, all super cool, and just gives me an appreciation for what you guys do, and it's awesome. So I appreciate the invite.
You're welcome. I'm really glad that you all came down.
I guess what I'm saying, it's different than I've done the tours before, right?
That's what's different for me is I haven't done this before.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
you're in for
to
a
go
letdown
through it,
when you go anywhere else.
yeah, right. Because I mean, to go
Set
through
the bar
this and
pretty
see
high
it,
here.
It
we
really
appreciate
is.
that, man. This is amazing. This whole thing is just unbelievable. It's pristine. Like everything is just phenomenal, and it's really cool to see the process and the way that you explained it too is awesome. Like I mean, it really puts it all together for me. Like to understand how this all works, it's pretty amazing to see how it goes from start to finish. And I had no clue.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I've done a little bit of homework on some of this stuff, and I really just like to drink it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. But to really see it though,
at
the end of the day, but like to see it though, it's pretty awesome. And
it makes the drink better.
Yes, absolutely. And
It really does.
really appreciate it a lot more. And the stories behind everything too. That, like you told us earlier when we were upstairs, like the mixture of the science behind it and then the art.
Yeah.
And then you tell the story. That really puts it together, and like it honestly makes it better.
Yeah.
When you can appreciate it so much more. And I think that's what's awesome about whiskey.
Yeah.
Or alcohol in general, I guess, because I mean we did have some gin.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was phenomenal too.
With
so
its
I mean,
own kind of story too, its own sort of identity.
absolutely. With
but-
the story behind it really helps out a lot. And really appreciate everything you've done for us today, man. This has been a great experience for us because we haven't been able to do this.
Yeah.
And this has been a lot of fun, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's really been fun for me, and I really apprete the dad hacks.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, do you have any other
Enjoy the
questions
peanut
for us,
butter.
by the way?
I will. Yeah.
I think I'm going to,
And here's the thing, and we've been fortunate.
Take video.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to meet a lot of guys that are getting ready to be dads, that people that just like through networks that, we would have never met before, and sincerely, like, reach out. You know what I mean?
you
Like,
got it.
something's going on. Like, dude, I don't trust this idiot that wrote this book, this doctor that wrote this book. We know what's up. Like, I mean, seriously though, part of whiskey, part of fatherhood, part of just being a human being is the relationships that you build, and using those to propel and move forward and improve, right? And so I think that's what I love about doing the podcast. Is we're getting to meet people who we never would have crossed paths with before.
Yeah, because,
And
I mean, you could come here and do this tour with us and everything like that, but to sit here and talk to you about your personal life, like about your baby girl that's about to be born, right? And like to have that's to sit down and actually get to know you.
It's a connection.
That's really cool.
And that's what's cool. So,
Well, I really appreciate it, guys. This was a lot of fun.
good.
absolutely,
I'm
man.
glad you had fun. We definitely had a
We
blast.
had a blast, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, so much fun. Thank you so much again. Rabbit Hole Distillery. This place,
Amazing.
super excited.
Thanks for taking us behind the
put this
scenes
out
too,
there.
man.
Yeah,
This is really cool.
Feels
So exclusive. Like everything's closed. We're not doing tours. We're
big
like,
deal.
but we get a tour.
We gotta
I felt bad. There was like
bottle
people,
service,
people saw us walking in. There was like
No, I
people
know.
out there like, oh, well, we're going to come in. I'm like,
No, you're not. No, you're not. But we are. We're being the ambassador.
Oh boy, I hope they don't listen to this podcast.
No, very, very cool. Thanks so much. Anything else that you want to get out there before we take it down?
You know, I'm just gonna say the same thing I said earlier. Find what you love, share it with those that you love.
Love that.
I love that, man. Thank you.
Love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much to you guys for watching and listening to us ramble on. But like we
always,
just always have a good time with this, and that's what we love to do. So
Yep.
Make sure you follow us on all the socials. Make sure that you subscribe on our YouTube channel. Find us wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Do all that kind of good stuff. And be good to each other, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Peace.
Hey guys, if you love what you just heard or watched, and we know you did, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up. Share with your friends and throw us a comment, literally about anything. Your support legit keeps us going. Oh, and don't forget to give us that 5-star rating. We really appreciate you.